Newt pounds his fists, rattles Clapper and Brennan back in the swamp holes they slithered out of by us4trump.com. During his press conference with Vladimir Putin, President Trump misspoke and accidentally said he doesn't see any reason why it would be Russia, instead of saying why it wouldn't be Russia who meddled in the 2016 election. However, before he could correct his statement, as he did on Wednesday, former Obama officials and Democrats were quick to pounce on Trump's remarks, and after doing so, Newt Gingrich instantly struck back, making them regret stepping out in the first place. Among critics of Trump are, of course, James Clapper and John Brennan, two men who were also in charge of America's line of defense against meddling that apparently occurred on their watches during Obama's tenure and the 2016 election cycle. Newt Gingrich appeared on Fox News and ripped apart the two former officials and every other critic that belonged to Obama's administration when he blasted out a dose of facts that no liberal news source dare mentions. Newt admitted he, too, spoke out on Trump's remarks, but they were directed in a way to get the president's attention to clarify what he meant, which the president soon took heed to. But Newt thinks the way Clapper, Brennan, and other former officials are attacking the president is absurd, since they were in power when Russia hacked our election in the first place. Newt faced the camera and slammed Clapper and Brennan when he said, let's take a listen instead of saying it.
I got a transcript, I reviewed it. I actually went out and reviewed a clip of an answer that I gave, and I realized that there is a need for some clarification. It should have been obvious. I thought it would be obvious, but I would like to clarify just in case it wasn't. In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't, or why it wouldn't be Russia.
All right, so there you got the President of the United States yesterday afternoon in the Roosevelt Room clarifying what he had said at that press conference with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. Newt Gingrich joins us right now, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor. He's also got a great new book out. It's called Trump's America. Mr. Speaker, before the president clarified, you said of the mistake, you said it was the most serious mistake of his presidency. Now you've heard him clarify, said that he misspoke, problem with the double negative. What do you think?
Well, if you read the entire text of what he said in the Roosevelt Room, he goes on at length reinforcing his belief in the American intelligence agencies, and, by the way, pointing out that his critics are the people who failed. When you see John Brennan or you see other people who are Jim Clapper talking on television, those are the guys who were in charge in 2016. So their hysteria and their strong language, they're the failures. Trump was a candidate. He wasn't in charge of national security. They were, and they failed. I thought that his correction was important. I frankly think he could give a major speech and put it in context. I mean, a lot of the stuff we've heard, and I was as direct as I was the other day because I felt it was important to get his attention. He's not a guy, as you know, he's not a guy who likes to correct himself or likes to admit he made a mistake. And I thought this was a big enough one that he simply had to stop and set the record straight. But let's also look at the record. Obama was very weak in Ukraine. Trump has authorized the sale of offensive weapons to the Ukrainians to defend themselves. Trump has expelled 60 Russian intelligence people from the United States. He has closed 4 Russian offices in the United States. He went to NATO to do what? To get them to increase their spending so they would be stronger in containing Russia. He lectured the Chancellor of Germany about what? About buying natural gas from Russia and propping up Putin. So to suggest that somehow Trump is some patsy for Putin requires you to deny everything that he's done, and that's why correcting that one mistake, I thought, was very important.
We want to get your...
Just real quick, Leon Panetta, the former CIA director, says the way Trump behaves is clear signal the Russians have something on him. Do you want to counter that, or you want to agree with that?
Sure, I think John Brennan is a total disgrace.
No, I'm Leon
I think
Panetta.
he was a failure. Yeah. Well, in Panetta's case, Brennan had called it treasonous. In Panetta's case, I'd like to know why when he was advising Obama, they didn't provide offensive weapons to Ukraine. Why they didn't do the things to increase spending at NATO. Why, I just think that all of a sudden you have this revisionist history from the left. The fact is that Obama was totally ineffective. Hillary Clinton's reset button was a joke. She gave the Russians access to uranium that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So when I look at the totality of the Obama period, it seems to me that Trump has been so much tougher than Obama was that there's no question. And I don't know why Leon would say that. I mean, Leon's a pretty balanced guy. But I thought it was Brennan just because it sounded like Brennan, who was pretty unbalanced.
I'll add something to that, too. The Russians would not be in the Middle East again if President Obama enforced his red line in Syria. That left an opening for the Russians to come back in, start taking the so-called weapons of mass destruction, that poison gas, out. By the way, they left almost all of it in. And next thing you know, they're flying their planes, and their presence in Syria is where it is today.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that compared to, in terms of who was softer on Putin, I think that Trump has fired about 125 missiles into Syria in order to enforce our disagreement with the use of chemical weapons. As I said a minute ago, he expelled in support.
Did you notice that they're pushing the narrative that the Russians were involved with the Syrian, in Syria, the gas, when we know it was the rebels? I mean, really? Because I didn't quite catch that.
Russians would not be in the Middle East again.
What? Right here. Sorry about that, folks.
So much tougher than Obama was that there's no question. And I don't know why Leon would say that. I mean, Leon's a pretty balanced guy. But I thought it was Brennan just because it sounded like Brennan, who was pretty unbalanced.
I'll add something to that, too. The Russians would not be in the Middle East again if President Obama enforced his red line in Syria. That left an opening for the Russians to come back in, start taking the so-called weapons of mass destruction, that poison gas, out. By the way, they left almost all of it in. And next thing you know, they're flying their planes, and their presence in Syria is where it is today.
The people of America know that it wasn't the Russians that did this. It was America, the deep state, funding the rebels. Yet, even you see that the people here in America, we don't get the proper information. We don't get the proper information. Putin was. I'm not saying that Trump didn't help. They were connected with Putin in the sense of getting these rebels out. Why do you think ISIS is done for? Because of Putin. I mean, really?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that compared to, in terms of who was softer on Putin, I think that Trump has fired about 125 missiles into Syria in order to enforce our disagreement with the use of chemical weapons.
Yeah, but it wasn't Russia that used the chemical weapons or the Syrian or Bashar al-Assad. It's the deep state. Oh my.
As I said a minute ago, he expelled, in supporting Great Britain, he expelled 60...
Great Britain are the criminals. That's part of the deep state. The head honchos there.
Officers who were in the United States. He closed 4 offices.
Right.
I didn't see anything like that out of Obama. So, but I'm not going to say that Obama, therefore, was a puppet of Putin. And I'm frankly very surprised that somebody as rational as Leon Panetta would have said that.
Yeah. Well, the president's saying it's Trump derangement syndrome, why the left is treating him this way. This is his latest tweet. He said, some people hate the fact that I get along well with President Putin of Russia. They would rather go to war than see this. It's called Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah, they would rather go to war because you're not sending Hillary Clinton and the dumb liberals to the front lines. If they want to go to war, let's put them on the front lines and let's see how they do facing up to Russia. You get what I'm saying? No, but they want to send your kids. That's what Hillary wants to do. She wants to get this in action if she was in office.
Well, you do remember that on the left, they had 4 different sets of signs to oppose any of the 4 people that Trump picked to be the U.S. Supreme Court Justice. So it gives you some flavor. You know, they wake up in the morning, they know Trump has done something wrong. They just don't know what it is yet. But they know that they'll be outraged. You know, they know they're going to spend the day being outraged. They just don't know exactly what it is they're going to be outraged by. But I want to go back. This was a very important moment for this president. If he had not fixed this, if he had not had that talk in the Roosevelt room, if he had not gone on to reinforce the American intelligence system, I think that we'd be in a much bigger mess right now. And I'm really delighted that he took a serious look at it. He hates to correct himself. It's not who he is. But I think he did the right thing, and I think he did it well.
All right.
Yeah, because the deep state is still in control. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah, and look, and Newt knows that there's a deep state. You see where I'm going with it? So he's saying to Trump, like in a sense, like, hey, yo, you better change the rhetoric a little bit because we still haven't cleaned out the swamp, so to speak, because these people are dangerous. And I just thought of that, yes, the lights that were going off in the Oval Office, that was a clear message because it wasn't the first time that the lights went off in the Oval Office. I mean, you see where I'm going with this? They're very dangerous. They're at their wits' end, and you don't know how they're going to react. Not that anything is going to change from what they're going to react, but, you know, the thing is that you have to be careful in this scenario. And meanwhile, we know that whatever Trump said at the meeting, that was the correct one. That was the correct one, because we're finding out information about when Lisa Page testified that that Clinton sold the information to the Chinese, and the Chinese were involved too. So come on now. But look, you got to play the game, and we got to see how this takes place and what's going to happen. But you know that the deep state is real, and that's one of the reasons I don't trust Gowdy, because Gowdy said, I never heard of a deep state. What are you telling me? You're bull. This is bull, what you're telling me. You get where I'm going? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching.